or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us today. My name is Jeffsky Poincy. I'm a program manager within the Africa team for Partners Global. Thank you for being part of this conversation on investing in the youth and the next generation of peace builders in coastal Africa. Today, we will have very interesting conversation about the critical role of youth in peace building, but more importantly, we will highlight, the inspiring work that a lot of young peace builders across different countries from Africa have implementing to address conflict within their community. So we are very happy to have four panelists with us from various African countries. We will share their experience and insight with us. But before we dive into the presentation, I would like to turn it to Kira Bushko, one of the co-executive directors of Partners Global, for some welcoming remarks. Kira, are you here?
Great. My audio is on now. Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jeffsky. On behalf of Partners Global, let me add my welcome to everyone who's joining today. We have a really dynamic group of peace builders and policy experts who'll be sharing their experiences and insights about the situation, the security situation in West Africa today. And we'll be learning about how some of the most critical and complex problems facing communities are being addressed by youth through innovative, conflict-sensitive, and locally responsive action. For those of you who don't already know us, Partners has been supporting conflict transformation and peace building across West Africa for more than a decade. Since Partners' early days, way back in the 1990s, we have collaborated with like-minded leaders working at what we describe as the intersection of peace building and democracy, each helping to grow and sustain civil society in their respective countries. Partners Global is known for successfully incubating independent, locally led nonprofit organizations. The Partners Network is made up of civil society organizations in 20 countries, including in Senegal and Nigeria. Both our West African centers have been leading efforts to prevent and counter violence and to empower women and youth to resist, survive, and thrive in fragile contexts. Across the globe, we have worked alongside colleagues from civil society, government, and the private sector, as well as activists and security actors, supporting their commitments to build more resilient, cohesive, and peaceful societies. At Partners, we truly live our core values as we prioritize local leadership, inclusion, and authentic partnership, among other values. Localization has remained central to Partners' efforts wherever we work. We have pioneered localization approaches to development that create spaces for local leadership to flourish. These approaches are also consistently informed by the unique needs of marginalized and underrepresented groups. We rely on the knowledge and expertise of our partners, community leaders, and other local stakeholders to identify challenges and opportunities for peaceful change. These are contextualized by those closest to the communities and most familiar with the issues. And we have seen again and again how this cultivates ownership and buy-in from a broad and diverse range of stakeholders and places agency and accountability where they belong. And no matter who is driving an initiative, could be civil society, local government, traditional and religious leaders, or it could be youth, women, or other marginalized groups. Whoever is involved in making the decisions and guiding the action invariably experiences growth in their leadership skills and finds their agency is strengthened. And in the particular case of youth, such expanded leadership capacities are really key to their success in helping to prevent violence and counter extremist influences they may be facing at every turn. For Partners, inclusion is both an internal organizational priority and a core value that's reflected in our work with the GFA Coalition. As many of you know, the coalition is working closely with the U.S. Congress and the administration to help ensure successful implementation of the Global Fragility Act. Together with the code leads, AFP and Mercy Corps, we focused at Partners on developing and coordinating coalition recommendations to the U.S. Interagency Group regarding how best to engage local experts and stakeholders in meaningful consultations in line with legislative requirements. The critical role of civil society in holding government accountable is taken very seriously in this context and is certainly not without its challenges. But I think that may be the subject of another webinar. It's conversations like this, though, where policymakers, policy experts can hear from local peace builders and vice versa, that enable those obligations for meaningful consultation to be met. And then we all learn a lot in the process. So thank you again for being with us today. And let's get to our presenters. I'll turn it back over to you, Jeffsky.
Thank you, Kira. And I think I just also want to give a brief, overview about one of our project that we've been implementing in coastal West Africa. It's the Peacebuilding Education and Capacity Enhancement for West African Youth. We call it Peaceway Project. This project is being implemented in collaboration with the West Africa Network for Peacebuilding, WANEP National, in 5 different countries in the region: Ghana, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, and Togo. And this project brings together a cohort of 250 young people, young leaders working in their communities. And the goal of this project is to provide resources, to provide training to those people, to those young leaders, to support their activities, their initiative, to make sure that they, to amplify the work that they're already doing in their community. And the core, as Kira mentioned, the core of this approach through this project is to create a platform, create a space where young people can interact with each other, can learn from each other, and in order to amplify the voice. So I think that's the framing of our conversation today. And we're happy to have 4 panelists, and including 3 of our Peaceway Fellows with us, one from Ghana, one from Togo, and one from Guinea. But before we turn into our Peaceway Fellows to share their experience with us, we're also happy to have Mark Germain with us as well. Mark Germain is the country director for the U.S. strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. And it's a great opportunity for Mark to share with us what the strategy about, the relevance of the strategy for the region, and ultimately what is the youth component of the strategy involved. Mark, if you're with us, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Good morning and good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Mark Germain. I am the country program manager for the country coordinator for the GFA in Togo. I'm based here in Lomé, and I work along with country coordinators in 4 of the other GFA countries along the coast, working on the strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. I have a little slideshow here that I can walk through quickly if that would be helpful, or if we want to just have conversation just to talk about the work of the strategy, whatever would be helpful. You think, Jeffsky?
For the slide, I think you would have to send it to me or through Christian.
Let's see. All right, yeah, let's see. Hold on one moment, please.
I can make Mark co-host and then you can share your screen if you want.
Yes, absolutely. That's
Yep.
work as well.
Sure, let me see.
Okay, Mark, you should be able to now.
Sure. All right, great. Let me see. All right. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So yeah, I just want to just talk a little. I'll give a high level overview just of SPCPS, the strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. Um, as many of you know, it's a 10-year strategy of the US government really to look at the drivers of conflict and to create a coordinated strategy um, to address conflict in the region. Really, the work is based on lessons learned from the US's interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere, and to really sort of think more strategically about how do you think about long-term stability in places across the country, across the world, and really how do we think in a coordinated way, not just in terms of our military interventions, but also focusing on a range of work that the State Department does in development and USAID does in development, and also other agencies around economic development, around forestry services, around an entire range of coordinated efforts. So we have a number of interventions, and principal amongst them, the 4 global objectives are prevention, and that is to address conflict before it starts, particularly relevant throughout coastal West Africa and other places that we're working in Mozambique and other places also. It's to stabilize peace processes and other efforts that are happening in the countries, really to be able to create a level playing field so that local partners, civil society partners, and others are able to have their voices heard. It's to partner with local governments to create long-term interventions that really build sustainability and build peace in countries. And it's to manage the resources and improve outcomes through prioritization, focused on integration and efficiency across our 3D efforts. And when we say 3Ds, we mean State Department, USAID, and Department of Defense. And so again, these 5 core principles really, in terms of the funding that we do and in terms of the engagement we do, is really on building partnerships. It's really upon listening to local voices and promoting locally driven solutions that are driven from the ground up, from the bottom up, and to think about integration and promote cooperation at the country level and at the local level. And really, I think the important thing also is really for us to look at learning and adaptation. And so through a 10-year strategy, what you do in year 1 and year 2, as you all know, changes and it's dynamic. And so to think about adaptation long-term, how do we learn from across what's happening across the CWA countries and applying lessons learned, but really at a local level and at a regional level so that we can have the most impact. And also to highlight and promote institutional changes, long-term durable institutional changes. And so working with leaders, working with young people, sort of across the lifetime of the initiative and longer term that we really are able to solidify and deepen the impact of the work that we're doing. As you can see here, the initiative, over $300 million has been allocated to fund regional efforts that are happening locally. We have senior diplomatic and development professionals and those engaged in the working at the local ground. We have expanded peace programming throughout Togo and throughout Benin and Ghana and the other countries, really expanding the breadth and the reach and the types of programming. And the other thing that we're really focused on is creating multi-donor mechanisms and multi-donor approaches, really working with various entities across like-minded partners throughout the region to be able to have a deep impact in the work, because the USG can't do it all alone, but it has to have partners. And so working with those partners, working with other partners in the region, other countries, but particularly our local government partners, to be able to move the work forward. So again, promoting peace to focus on preventing conflict and addressing violent extremism, in particular, across the northern areas of all of our countries, strengthening social cohesion, which is a major part of the work that we're doing. And that is work with both our young people across the region to address what the drivers are of conflict, but also looking at issues related to gender, issues related to farmers and herders, looking at issues related to economic disempowerment and isolation, and supporting governments so that they are more responsive to their own citizens, particularly those at-risk communities which may be marginalized, which may not be at the front and center of public discourse in these countries. And the other thing which we're really focused on is supporting local security forces in their work with at-risk communities, particularly across the north. We understand that there are legitimate concerns, that there are major conflict points in the northern parts of our country and across. And so really it's like, how do we work with the security forces so that they're responsive to the security threat, but they're not heavy-handed, and that they work and they see those local partners and they see those local residents as partners, as those who can provide information, those that can serve as community resources. And how do those local partners and how do those local security forces really build up their own capacity to engage their citizens in very meaningful and thoughtful ways, and so that they don't create conflict between residents and themselves, but that they see those residents in those communities as being able to be assets to them. Jesse, were you saying something?
No, go ahead. Go on.
Okay. And so amongst our major pillars is strengthening social cohesion amongst and between communities. So that's happening across the board with the type of engagements we're doing, convening young people, convening various groups, so that we can really think about and address the drivers, the major concerns, the major areas of conflict in communities. And so we do that through things like our Ambassadors Resilience Funds, through LRI, which is happening in the north of a number of our countries, working with local government institutions, with our Strengthening Regional Peace and Security Program, working with border forces and security forces that are working on the border, and additionally, working on radio programming. So strengthening the type of messaging that's occurring to address misinformation, malinformation, working on social media platforms so that false news doesn't spread, so that conflict isn't driven by information which is spread for malicious purposes. And so in terms of our objective 1, addressing social cohesion, objective 2, improving government responsiveness, as I mentioned. Supporting democratic political processes, supporting government institutions that are increasing provision of healthcare services, provision of economic opportunities across the board, working around technical training and skills support so that young people have additional access to opportunities. And objective 3, security force responsiveness. So working to strengthen the ability of security forces to provide needed services and to engage local residents, to minimize and reduce areas of conflict between security forces so that they are able to respond in appropriate manners to the legitimate security threats that are present. And so there are a range of work that we're doing in these spaces, training, provision of materials, facilitating engagement between local security forces and community actors. And all this is in the aim of really also strengthening the relationship between regional security forces, understanding that the threat and what is happening at a regional level across coastal West Africa, coming down from the Sahel, but also driven by internal factors within those countries and ensuring and supporting the work of security forces to address their legitimate concerns. So there are a range of gaps and challenges. And so for that, as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, supporting iterative and adaptive approaches, learning from our partners, both within the countries and across the CWA countries, focusing on enhancing private sector development, working with a range of other efforts from USAID and State Department, private sector development, technical skills transfer, facilitating relationships between U.S. enterprises, using a bottom-up approach, working with small and mid-sized enterprises, and importantly, working with our multilateral and development partners across the board to think about what is the targeted training, what is the targeted investments they can do in these particular areas, particularly in the north and other parts of the country that are undergoing stress and conflict, and changing those dynamics, particularly looking at issues related to refugees and migration flows, and how to support countries being welcoming and adapt to those that are coming into their countries, and promoting information sharing. So I'm going to stop there. There's more, but I think I want to just stop there, and we can certainly continue the conversation. But that's a general overview of the initiative.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a, thank you for this very comprehensive presentation on the strategy. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Yes, we will have time to answer questions and ask questions at the end of the presentation, but I encourage you all to write your question on the chat group as well. Yes, so you can already put your question on the chat, and we will monitor them and make sure that we address them after the presentations. And again, thank you very much, Mark. And I think there's a lot of things that you mentioned resonate well with Partners Global values and with the context of this conversation as well. And one of them is the importance to follow a locally driven approach. And we at Partners Global, we believe we believe in this, and we believe in building bridges among communities. We believe in investing in communities at the very grassroots level, and that's where we think change happens. So talking about the situation in the region in general, we're happy to have with us Alice Bokuma. Alice Bokuma is a community development professional with more than 15 years of experience in international development. She is currently a peacebuilding expert and early warning analyst with Unarmed Ghana, and we're very happy to have her with us to walk us through the current situation right now in the region, as well as in Ghana. Alice, I will turn it over to you.
Jesky, I have some slides I will want to take you through. And so let me just project my screen.
Just one second, Alice, I think I will ask Christian to share a slide for you.
Okay.
Christian, could you please share on your screen so we could share Alice's presentation?
Yes, 1 second.
Thank you, Christian. I'll be taking you through conflict landscape in the region and youth-led grassroots approaches to addressing these conflict issues. And I'll be looking at some of the interventions OneUp is carrying out. We'll be looking at other areas that we work in. So we want to say that for us at our side, we see the conflict landscape to be characterized and described by several interrelated issues, including weak governance, challenges relating to environment and climate change, violent extremism and terrorism, and ethnic tensions. Christian, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so we have realized in the region that most president and leadership do not want to go off from their term. So when it is time for them, they try to review their constitution so that they can prolong their stay. And sometimes the way they are handling governance issues are not to the best and the interest of the youth. And sometimes these things come with a lot of issues and agitations. And so you realize that these things are leading to a lot of demonstrations and protests from civilians. And so when you look at what is happening in the sub-region, in West Africa alone, we have experienced 14 attempts of coup in 2023 that were aimed at extending presidential terms in 7 countries. And these countries are known to us, but I want to mention them again. Burkina Faso, we experienced 2 of them. We have also experienced it in Togo, we have experienced it in Benin, and we've experienced it in Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and the Gambia and Senegal. And when you look at the drivers, as I have already mentioned, these things are due to decline in democratic standards and limited space for political dialogue. Political party leaders have their interests, and so they are not even trying to create room for people to engage in dialogue so that they can have a better understanding of issues and address it amicably. And so once these opportunities are not created, people get frustrated and they take to the streets to protest. There are also flawed elections, and people have lost confidence in the system. People don't trust what is happening. There are a lot of election irregularities and lack of transparency. So when these things happen, especially the youth who come into close contact sometimes with politicians and political leaders who give them a lot of assurances, when they realize that people are in office and they are not doing what is expected, then they will have issues, and sometimes this comes with violent confrontations and clashes. Next slide. So you realize that we have a lot of conflicts, as I've already explained, related to unconstitutional change of government between 2020 to 2023 from the West African Network for Peacebuilding, our early warning system. We also have recorded 6 successful coups in the region and 8 attempted. And the drivers are due to government leadership complicity. Especially, I want to make reference to the case of Ghana. Currently, elections are getting closer in Ghana, and we are tracking some of the incidences that are related to elections. And you realize that youth have lost interest in political life, and their reasons they usually will tell you is that leadership is not pursuing their interest. Leadership, they are only out to amass wealth. And so state properties, you realize that some leadership, excuse me to say, are beginning to acquire illegally some state properties. And this doesn't go down well with people. We have extractive industry, and you realize that some of the leadership are condoning and conniving with some other power holders in the society to own some mining concessions, and this is also becoming a problem to the nation. We have other human rights violations, especially when these things are happening and youth take to the streets to protest or demonstrate. Sometimes they clash with the security, and sometimes human rights are violated. And also, when you look at the districts and even at the community level, sometimes there are a lot of human rights that are violated because, especially with the youth, they are excluded from platforms where they can engage with persons in authority to demand what is due them. And you've also seen that, yes, they have needs, and political leaders are not factoring these needs into their plans and budget. And so these are also becoming issues. And there's also high cost of living, and it's affecting the youth and families in general in the communities. Next slide. Okay, so apart from governance issues, we also have pockets of social conflicts that are also attributed to customary governance. You realize that most of the conflicts we experience in the South region, especially in Ghana, are attributed to chieftaincy inheritance, land tenure inheritance, farmer-herder conflicts, and ethnic tensions. And when you look at the drivers, our chieftaincy institution customarily have uncodified regulations. Uncodified regulations. And so as generations go on, sometimes people lose track of some of the regulations, laid down regulations that are guiding how people succeed or how people become chiefs in our communities. And sometimes this is also problematic, and people sometimes fall into conflict with each other, and they pull out guns and other weapons that lead to loss of lives. Land tenure is also another issue. We know land is a resource, and it's becoming one of the key issues in the region, especially in Ghana, because people are looking for fertile lands to farm. People are looking for lands that have rich natural resources. And so people begin to say, this portion of the land belongs to me, that portion of the land belongs to me. And you realize that in the sub-region, especially in Ghana, most often some of these farmlands or rural lands are not mapped out. And so sometimes it is very difficult to tell unless the land priests come out to say that this portion belongs to this person. And sometimes it also comes with a lot of disagreements, and people end up clashing over land. We have ethnic tensions. You realize that in the rural setting in Ghana, you will find about 2 or 3 ethnic groups in a particular community. And as they dwell there in a long time, it comes to a time that people begin to say, this part of the land is mine, I first settled there and I am the owner. And this particular tribe are the majority, and so they should command the resources in that environment. So you begin to see that ethnic groups in the community, instead of being bonded together and working together to promote development in the community, they are not, because they are in conflict with one another. And because of that, there is disintegration among them, and they are not able to come together to do anything for the good of the community. We have limited channels for community inputs, especially when we are to deal with our youths. Our youth, you realize that in the region, and especially in Ghana, and especially in northern Ghana, because of lack of education, the literacy level is high. Leaders, especially political leaders and chiefs, think that the youth are difficult people, they are naughty, and they don't want to listen to them and do what they want them to do. And the youth also thinks that, no, our future is now, there is no future anywhere for us. We need to survive. We also have very brilliant ideas that can contribute to our development, and there's a need to be engaging with us so that you understand us better, and together we take a decision that can work for the good of the community. And so because of these issues, most often there are clashes in the community. Sometimes you find youth having misunderstanding with chiefs, and the chiefs or leaders in the community, especially members of parliament, sometimes not engaging the youth effectively as they should engage them. And this also is becoming a very big problem in our development process and causing a lot of violent conflicts. Next slide. We also have farmer herder conflicts. Because of climate change issues, there are a lot of activities that we carry out as a people, and sometimes some of these activities affects the environment, and we are not able to get what is required for our livelihoods. And when these things happen, it comes with a lot of effects. For instance, people burn bushes, people do illegal mining, and within the extractive industry, there are a lot of things that happen. People use all sorts of things. And so it happens that usually people are displaced because of floods, because of conflict, and they migrate. And when they migrate to another place where they think that they can be able to acquire fertile lands for farming, grasslands for grazing, especially with the herders, sometimes they have conflicts with other community members, because community members are also seriously protecting their farmlands, because it is difficult sometimes. Instead of having, in Ghana, we have the southern part experiencing double maximum rainfall, northern part single. And so in the north, for instance, when people are able to plant their crops and they have not designated places for herders to take their cattle to for grazing, definitely this cattle will have to pass through some farmlands to be able to access greener grass for grazing. And sometimes they stray onto farmlands, and herders have issues with farmers, and these issues sometimes are very fatal. People lose their lives. For instance, from our early warning system in 2023, between May and November, we recorded 217 incidences of flooding, resulting in 963 fatalities and displacement of approximately 1.6 million people, primarily in Ghana, especially when the Volta River was spelled wrongly. And because other people have to migrate to other places. And once people are displaced and there's displacement and people migrate to other places, sometimes they will have to compete for the little that is available for them. And usually some of these things come with a lot of conflict issues that you need to actually manage. Farmer herder incidences in our early warning system, we recorded 380 incidences in the first 2 quarters of 2024, with 1,340 casualties, compared to 157 incidences with 1,105 fatalities in 2022. This is an indication of an increasing trend, and we think that development partners should look critically into this area, and together we can find some solutions to helping this situation. Next, please. Okay, so again, I will go back to extractive industry. The youth are the people that are mostly engaged in these activities because they will have to survive and they need to do something for their livelihood. And this usually comes with a lot of disputes. For instance, people buy their mining concession and you find the youth encroaching illegally, or they find themselves into areas where they can mine secretly and move out. And sometimes they come into conflict with land guards because the mining concessions also have their security men who are guiding the concessions seriously. And so they don't want the youth to go there. And usually when there are these clashes, people die. Also, in the extractive industry, we've observed that because most of the youth are not actually trained on how they can carry out their mining activities safely, you find that most often we record incidences of cave-in pits and collapse pits, and a lot of youth will lose their lives. We also have water pollution. The extractive industry, a lot is happening there. The youth are doing mining that is not authorized, and they don't have the capacity to do it safely. And so they use all sorts of chemicals that are not safe for our environment. So we have aquatic life being affected. We have water sources being polluted. And this is a very serious issue, especially in Ghana. Currently, everywhere it is being discussed on our news platforms. Some other bodies, especially the health sector, currently are advocating for a ban on small-scale mining. Other civil societies are demanding a state of emergency. The Ghana Bar Association have also come in strongly to advocate against this practice. And it is an area that is also becoming an area that is contributing to conflict and must be looked at seriously. Christian, next. Yes, you cannot discuss conflict in the region without looking at terrorist attacks in the region. In 2021, between 2021 to 2023, from our early warning system, we recorded 20,749 extremist attacks in the region. And usually we look at extremist attack, we pick data on extremist attacks at the same time organized crime because they are related closely. And so under organized crime, we also recorded incidences. The incidences rose from 932 in 2021 to 1,601 in 2022. And currently, we have recorded in 2023, 1,715. And for the first two quarters of 2024, we have recorded 2,604 incidences. This, you can see there is a wide gap. The trend is increasing, which means that the terrorists are out there and they are working hard, and peace builders also need to work hard because it is not helping us at all. It is becoming an issue that is leading to a lot of underdevelopment in our countries, in the region, because lives are lost. Younger people, because of economic challenges, are being radicalized. And some will tell you during community engagements that they have very good reasons why they will want to work with the extremists, and there is a need to actually engage them further and provide the needed support that they need. In countries affected in the region, we have Burkina Faso, we have Mali, we have Nigeria, we have Niger, we have Benin and Togo. The USA presenter mentioned this. And for organized crime, we have Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Niger, Benin, Togo, and Sierra Leone. And we see a relationship here because when you look at the early warning system, the reports that come in, some of the youth that are engaged in organized crime activities are people that can easily be radicalized. And so this is an area that we have to give attention. Yes, so when we're looking at drivers, why will the terrorists be able to take advantage of our youth in the region? There are a lot that is happening in the region. I discussed earlier on in my earlier presentation on governance, there's a lot that is happening. There's political insecurity and weak border management. When you look at the region, especially in Ghana here, when you look at our northern borders, a border to Burkina Faso, border to Togo, you realize that we have very few security people, and sometimes they are designated at places. And some communities are so proximate to our neighboring countries that are experiencing terrorist attacks. And every day when you are in those communities working, you see people coming in and going out because they come in to attend social activities because they have relationships across. And so it is an area that we need to be giving attention to because you don't know who is coming in and in what capacity the person is coming. And some of them come in and they are not, the immigration at the border are not able to find them so that they can profile them to know who exactly the person is who is coming in. We have small scale businesses thriving along the borders. We have people doing a lot of smuggling activities along, and terrorists can take advantage of some of these activities. We have our communal conflicts that are happening, which have weakened the grassroots level. And so it makes these communities vulnerable, and terrorists can take advantage of that. Because of the pockets of conflicts that we have, also there are armed trafficking, high demand for arms. Communities that are going through other social conflicts also still think that they need arms for protection. And so people are actually trafficking arms as a business. We have youth unemployment, currently very high in the world and especially in the region. And it's also a problem, an issue that should be looked at. Illegal mining, I've already spoke about that. And then cattle theft and exchange for arms. Definitely, sometimes people have cattle and they don't have money. So and cattle are expensive. So once they have them, they sometimes can trade, exchange that for arms for protection. Next. So we will be looking at some community level interventions in the region, especially in Ghana. Currently, in most of our communities, especially in Ghana, Unarmed Ghana have collaborated with communities to have a number of network of community monitors and informers who monitor incidences of conflict, and they are able to transmit this digitally onto our early warning platform, and we are able to do some analysis and engage stakeholders to respond appropriately and timely. We also have formation and training and use of community peace committees. These community peace committees are supposed to be at the grassroots level, responding to conflict issues so that they don't escalate to the extent that there will be loss of lives and property. We have Inter-Party Youth Dialogue Committee who are in the communities, engaging youth to carry out their electioneering and political activities peacefully without violence. We also have youth dialogues platforms. We have identified some youth groups in the communities, and they have their camps, and usually we have taken them through capacity building on social dialogue so that they can dialogue on issues that affect them and engage the appropriate stakeholders to address them. We have established early warning and response networks in border communities, recognizing that there could be spillover into their country. We have done that, and our colleagues in the other region are also doing similar interventions to curb the issue of violence. We have recognized groups in communities, and our attention has been on youth and women groups specifically that we have trained, and those with enhanced peace building capacity are engaging their colleagues at the group level and facilitating implementation of peace building interventions. Because Unarmed cannot be everywhere, and we have partnership with other people, but we think that the issues that we are experiencing currently in the region, we need grassroots intervention. If not, we will not be able to, it's overwhelming. Next. So the last slide, we are going to be looking at ways of improvement and some recommendations. We want to recommend that partners should design activities that bring youth together for peace building and empowerment. We are also recommending that partners in peace building should identify youth group leaders and build their capacity in social dialogue to engage with security personnel on stopping illicit economic activities along the borders. We are advocating for partners to also create youth and leadership forums to provide space for young people to engage with leaders and advocate for their needs to be included in development plans and budgets. We are also recommending empowerment of youth to participate in monitoring systems to ensure their needs are addressed in development plans and budgets. We are also recommending that there should be community farmer header social dialogue networks where they do not exist, because I'm saying where they do not exist because Unarmed Ghana and some other partners have been able to establish or formed and trained some social dialogue networks, community farmer header social dialogue networks, but this is not spread across all the areas that experience farmer header conflicts, and we still think that this idea is noble and should be replicated by other partners so that herders and farmers can discuss issues on challenges and find amicable solutions without necessarily having violent confrontations. We are also suggesting that partners who are interested in developing young people should also design economic empowerment interventions to diversify livelihoods for the youth in the region. And I think that if we team up with these recommendations, I think that we should be able to go a long way to addressing some of the conflict issues that we are experiencing across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice, for this insightful presentation. And I'm pretty sure that everybody now have a pretty good understanding of the different conflict dynamics in the region. And but one key takeaway from this presentation is, and as you perfectly laid it out, is the fact that youth vulnerability is the underlying factor for conflict in Ghana and across the region. And I'm also glad you kind of like underscore the different initiatives that the young people are implementing to address these issues at the community level. And I think it's the perfect moment to turn the focus to our young fellows, our young peace builders who are doing an amazing job in their communities. And I would like to introduce you Mamadou Noufaya Janvier. Mamadou Noufaya Janvier is a youth leader and activist from Guinea who was deeply committed to peace building, social cohesion, and youth development. Mamadou, I will turn it over to you for your presentation.
From the region of Togo, from Central Africa. My apologies, but we cannot hear the audio well enough. Interpreters apologize, but the audio is not coming through. Yes, very low, not high enough, not loud enough for the interpreter to be able to translate. It is working, however, the audio is so low, the interpreter can barely hear the speaker. No, it is the speaker that's very low. The volume is very low, and the interpreter can barely hear the speaker. I am going to give you an overview. Peace, it's not a word, a vain word. It's a behavior. It's just as the former president of the Ivory Coast, Félix Houphouët-Boigny, said, this is a phrase that has to do with responsibility, that it's crucial responsibility, and it involves the human species in the process of the preservation of peace, of security, and of a safer world. The future generation is going to be asking for more than that, and it will be more demanding, and it's going to be more determined before the era of technologies, which is an era that it's more powerful and more mobile. It's that where responsibility resides within the current generation, with the purpose of preserving at any cost a sustainable peace with. So this is an image of our community that interacts in
Okay, so this is activities of support. These are community projects. I'm sorry, we really are having a hard time trying to listen to you. Can you, okay, that's better? Yeah, it's better. Yeah, I think it was the microphone that didn't work. Don't worry. So if I mean, you don't really need the slideshow, so you can just continue your presentation the way it is, right? Okay. No, there you can hear me, right? Yes, we can hear you. Okay. So, okay, just one moment. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Just 1 second. Can you walk us through, I know that you've participated a lot in peace building efforts in your community. Can you please tell us about your experiences and also maybe the approaches that you have taken and also some implementation efforts that you have witnessed and that we can use, or the lessons learned, the initiatives that we can use as success stories and so forth? Yes, sure. So, yes, let me tell you that I have participated in community efforts, and also, yes, we've had a great deal of experience, a number of approaches on a community level that is strengthening the communities and yes, how communities will interact with other people. This is not a program or an entity that's been imposed onto them that to do this or do that. No, this is a grassroots effort. This is a way in which communities can make their voices listened to. So in this regard, we have been able implement a number of projects. We have implemented libraries that allow us to have some leisure time to read some books, to have people avoiding exposure so that people won't veer towards extremist groups that are so detrimental to our region. We have also created relationships with some other friends that have resulted in equipment on a regional level. Also, we have acted with communities and their children. We have implemented local aid with youth, with women, with children. In this way, we are reinforcing social tissue and also community experience. So, but not only that, we've also participated in different groups, youth groups that are acting on in in the baseline, right? Through financial and other efforts. Also, we have attacked poverty, and in this regard, we have accompanied communities so that they can self-employ themselves with local efforts that will allow them to become more self-reliant. And that is there are some efforts that we have undertaken. Also, we are having some oversight on prevention for extremist groups. We have worked with the committee. We have tried to avoid violence with grassroots organizations across the region. We have also been chosen to become a party to Peaceway, and this is a local effort. And through this project, we will implement action plans that we have devised, always in line with the developments that we have put together as a team. We are addressing the local problems, and we will come up with solutions, always with the community at the forefront of this resolution of problems. So yes, this is basically it. Also, we are trying to implement drinking water access projects. Also, we are looking into potential future partners that will help us put together this project. Also, we are coming up with a community resilience project through health community, community health of those people who have been exposed to terrorism and attacks. So yeah, that's a little bit about the presentation that I was preparing for you. And so we are hoping that our association uh, will have the appropriate partners accompanying us to implement this project to aid community. Because yes, we are, if peace is kept, everyone will be able to live their lives in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yandumbe. For the sake of time, I think we will turn it over to Patricia for the last presentation, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes for question. Patricia, I will turn it over to you. And Patricia is a peace builder, is a community leader, and also a Peaceway Fellow from Ghana. She's currently leading the Grazing Corridors Initiative for Peaceful Coexistence that she will be, talking about briefly. Patricia, I'll turn it over to you. Okay. Patricia, we cannot hear you. I think you're on mute.
Okay. Okay. Yes. When we talk about conflict in West Africa, if looking at what Madam Alice actually presented on, our conflicts are particularly connected to one thing or the other. Is the land dispute, the chieftaincy issues, and then the farmer header conflict. And in Ghana, for a very long time, especially in the northern part of Ghana, we've been experiencing all these kinds of conflict. We have the chieftaincy dispute and the farmer header dispute. And then we have the land dispute as well. Yes. And some of the causes of this conflict is because some of the custodians of the lands, yes. Okay. Please, I'm coming.
Are you still with us, Patricia?
Yes, I'm with you. Yes. And in this conflict, there are many approaches that have been brought out in order to resolve. We have the community, the communities relying on the local leaders and mediators to help solve these conflict issues. But some of these
Hello? I think, yes, I think we've lost Patricia.
I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, I had a microphone issue, but I don't know if you can listen to me just now.
Yes, Mamadunu, yes, we can hear you. Unfortunately, there's been some connection issue with Patricia. We can turn it to Mamadunu. If you could, quickly tell us about your experience in the community.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if you could please share my screen so I can go ahead and share my slides. I was about to tell you I am Mr. Mamadou. I am an engineer. And I began working during the pandemic in the unification of peace at the level of Guinea. In the framework of this presentation, I'd like to speak about our approach in the prevention of conflicts within the communities, which is going to allow us to work along with the United States and other institutions in West Africa. So, as I said, there are different difficulties in which we need help and assistance. As you can see in the first approach that was utilized, these are our first pillars. So we have the first one, and integration of sustainability. It is an approach that's going to allow us to handle conflict in our region while utilizing the resources available, because we in Africa, when we have to deal with the authorities, the landscape becomes very complicated. So this is a kind of approach that was implemented in the level of Guinea, identifying the conflict. And we have included a group of action that it's going to approach the situation before the situation explodes. So this is another group, which is the participation of our civil society. So it's a village in the southern part of Guinea, which has involved itself in many activities. It has suffered part of the war. And it has also suffered the cholera epidemic and also Ebola pandemic, plus COVID. And in 2020, after 2020, the civil society has organized a forum that contemplates the perspectives for the future and the implications. In my opinion, this is going to assist in easing and alleviating the conflict the region has undergone. Now, here we can see the situation of our youth after Miss Allison participated. So here we have the children, which are the actors in the promotion of peace, but they are also the victims. So we have children demonstrating on the streets. So we must tackle an approach that is going to educate the youth towards civism. So this is an approach that will tackle the situation of the youth as it relates to their presence on the street. So our National Democratic Institute tackles all the layers involved, where the youth and females and handicapped individuals can participate towards the building of peace. So that each one of them participates in the capacity of a peace builder. So this is an approach that is tackling the conflict. So there are certain similarities that we see between the presence of a conflict and food safety. So what about food safety and conflict? As you can see nowadays within the countries that are in conflict, the level of food security is quite high. So you can see Yemen, you can see different countries involved. Whenever there is a war or an armed conflict in the area or in the locations, we see an effect. The number of people that die due to these conflicts and we also see the amount of people that are affected by malnutrition. So we can see that each country participates in the prevention of conflict. So how can we guarantee food safety while preventing conflict? And how could the prevention of conflict can guarantee food safety? So these are the two stepping blocks of the conflict resolution. So here are recommendations for international organizations and the United States government. So the first recommendation that we have here, it's the investment that we can provide in the training of leadership among the youth in Africa. So once we're able to ask, when we're able to ask a youth why the youth is demonstrating on the street, so we must, once we have tackled that group of youth demonstrated, we can know why they're doing it, whether there's a justification. So there is a lack of education, and I do believe that financing initiatives and training programs towards leadership will be of assistance towards mediation and resolution of conflicts, and that way we'll be able to observe a better outcome. So another recommendation, it's the second one, it's linked to entrepreneurial activities among the youth. Many of these youth don't have a professional activity or ever. So the partners that are interested in the entrepreneurship creation among the youth, so that's going to, so I can tell you that it's really the absolute reality in our country through the demonstrations that we see. So here's another recommendation. It's to promote the dialogue among cultures and among generations. This is going to encourage programs of dialogue in that way among different communities that are ethnic communities, cultural communities, which is going to facilitate knowledge regarding of what we know in order to defend ourselves and have a better outcome in the future. So in that way, individuals can tell us their success. Another recommendation, it's regarding the environment and its devastation, just like Ms. Alexis said. So this is the mine at Siguri in Guinea. So you can see the mining activities. But here, another point is the degradation of the environment. It's, for example, it's here, as we can see the cyanide. It's cyanide. It's a chemical that's going to contribute to impoverish the fertility of the land, affecting food security. So that is going to have an effect, a more severe effect in food security. So the last recommendations, it's to reinforce the program of peace and security among the youth. So we have our partners as it regards to the initiative, which allows the initiatives for individuals can be involved in the prevention of conflict. Here we have already individuals that are devoted towards the prevention of conflicts and towards peace building activities. However, there is this lack of benefit guaranteeing. So we see the existence of programs, of youth programs, and as it involves security and peace. But I believe that through different reinforcement of these programs that allows these individuals to learn innovative methods to prevent conflict and work towards peace building. So that is my contribution, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure to be present during this session, and I'll be more than glad to participate in the next one.
And I think the link between food and security and conflict, both as a driver and also as a consequence, I think is a great perspective to look at when we're talking about conflict. Well, thank you for those recommendations. Unfortunately, we might not have time to to go through questions. But those of you who wants to receive the recording sessions and the presentation as well, please, you can put your contact information in the chat, and we'll be sure to share the presentation and the recording with you. But before we wrap up, I wanted to turn it over to Patricia to walk us through the initiative that she's currently implementing in northern Ghana. Patricia, if you're here with us, we can briefly show your presentation, specifically the part related to your project.
Yes.
Christian, if you could move the slide to the corridor project. Yes.
Please, this is okay. Yes. Yes, as a Peace Wave fellow and participating in some of the community engagement, I've realized that to be able to resolve conflicts in communities, we need to add up initiatives that will give long-lasting and sustainable peace in communities. And some of these engagements that I think would be good to take is like creating grazing corridors for grazing and farming corridors for both herders and then farmers. That's creating lands that are demarcated mainly for grazing and lands that are demarcated for farming. And also to actually do peacekeeping holistically, we need to add trauma healing rate. It's one thing I have discovered working with the Unarmed team, going to some communities that experience conflict. I've realized that some of these communities, it isn't that there couldn't be like the peace, the conflict couldn't be resolved wholly, but there are emotional issues that people are holding on to, that when they are taking through trauma healing processes, I think they out of it, and all that we can have a sustainable building a peace solution inside communities. In communities like Nchige, we encounter Madam Mariam, and Madam Mariam, who lost her firstborn son, who is the breadwinner of the family. And during our community engagement, we realized that she wasn't, each time we talk about the conflict that happened in 2023 in Wange, she became so fidgetive. She's not as herself. She began to like just want to leave the premises of the place. And then so we decided to engage her. And in engaging her, realized that she was still holding on to her loss. And with this, she doesn't even think that what the peace we are preaching is going to be possible. So I think some of these issues, some of these people need trauma healing in their lives. Like we do peace building in our communities, we should add trauma healing, at least so that these people who have been through conflicts and then have gone through these traumatic issues can heal in order to prevent recurring conflicts in our community. And my project, we are the project, as Peaceway Fellow, we've been given opportunity to write proposals to what we will be doing in our own communities to bring this. And my project is on grazing corridor, like creating grazing corridors for herders and then farming lands for the farmers. And in this initiative, when we are advocating for support in order to create places for the herders to have for their animals, and then the farmers too will have places for their farming activities in order to prevent the animals from crossing to farmlands and then destroying the farmers, that which will later lead to conflict. Yes, please.
Well,
Please. Yes, and with this grazing corridor project, we are also leveraging on the incorporating cultural engagement between the herders and farmers in the community, in Tatale Sanguli community in Ghana. For this cultural engagement will bring a peaceful coexistence between the farmers and herders. If they begin to engage in activities in the community together, they will be able to build they will have a relationship, and through which they can always iron out their differences when issues of their animals destroying the farmers' farmlands and farm products and other things happen.
right. Thank you very much, Patricia.
And my recommendation, the youth are essential agents of change in peace building efforts. And I will encourage that we, PartnersGlobal, US Department of State, and other agencies involve youth so much in the peace building projects, just like we did for Peaceway this year. The engagement was good. Education we had was very impactful, and we are going to be, community is having a Peaceway Fellow that will be an observer for ONEP Ghana. And then the engagement was so Though a lot of people allied, but a few people were admitted to the Peaceway project. And a lot of youth actually like to get into some of these projects. So we agree that more of this educational program should come up for the youth to be able to get education in this building and conflict resolution. And also, the youth should be given the opportunity and scholarship to study locally, both local and internationally, in peace building and conflict resolution. And in peace building, like I mentioned earlier, formal should also be like enforced, just like how we put more effort in the peace building. We should try and engage like specialists, people in that field in peace building. At the end of the day, when we do our conflict resolutions, it will be done, we will do it in a holistic manner, in a way that we don't leave any emotional issues unattended to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you. Unfortunately, we won't have time to go to questions. And sorry again, and sincere apologies for the connection issue that we've experienced. As I mentioned earlier, if you want us to share the recording and the PowerPoint presentation with you, we're happy to do so. Please take a minute to put your contact information in the chat. And as we wrap up, I want to thank our panelists for this, insightful conversation. I also want particularly thank all our Peaceway Fellows from Ghana, Togo, and Guinea who joined the call today. We appreciate your engagement in your communities, and we look forward to continuing those important conversations and working together. Thank you very much. Thank you.